Tā diena, manuprāt, ir iesākusies.
So I think we started quite nicely. I mean, we've sort of cruised through the morning session, and we've now come to the first panel discussion regarding the status of Latvian language in sort of a digital domain. Now, whenever state aid or European funding is available, then usually everyone claims that Latvian language is endangered or threatened in this digital domain. And even if it's not about funding, then usually people think about various risks that the Latvian language is exposed to. And I hope that the panelists will today shed some light on what we have done, what developments have happened, what advancements have been made in order to protect or strengthen the position of Latvia. Or probably we are on the open plain where we just have to sort of continue working in future. There are no obstacles, so I will give the floor in turn to each of the panelists here, and we'll start with Mr. Vasiļjevs as one of our co-organizers, and I'll try to sort of go by slides and I have some presentation here. And, you know, today everyone is very keen to go back in history and recollect the past. And let me go some 100 years back and show you that each of eras or each age has its own challenges, and Krišjāns Barons used the best available technology at the time. He traversed Latvia, he collected the folk songs from different places in Latvia, and he compiled this excellent, exceptional, wonderful language resource that really strengthened the positions of the Latvian language, and, you know, it's now available to us as our own collective memory. This age, of course, has its own challenges, and we therefore have to use the means available in this age in order to strengthen the positions and the status of the Latvian language. Now, what concerns present day, there are also very you know, practical reasons for that, Silo already talked about single digital market and Eurobarometer surveys available to us to show what is the sort of popular sentiment. Well, most of the people say that language is of importance in the digital age. Not everything is happening in English language. The hegemony of the English language is not really a reality. So 46% of Latvians claim that they are not reading any information or texts on the internet online if they are not in Latvian, in their native language. So basically those are Latvian inhabitants that have said that if it's not in their native language, they don't read it for whatever it is online. Now, as regards to the professional communication and sort of business contacts, 64% of entrepreneurs or businessmen claim that they very rarely communicate on the professional level in other languages than their native language. And Silo already gave us some figures regarding the e-business and e-commerce. And we can see basically the same trends here in Latvia. People very rarely buy anything on internet if there is no description available in a native language. 82%, whopping 82%. So you can see that language really has a very direct sort of impact or direct link to economic growth as well. So determines the economic growth. Now, as regards to all this question where we are at in terms of technological advancement, have we reached a sort of level of stage where our language is no longer endangered or threatened? So let me go back to a survey that was conducted in 2011-2012 across all the member states and associated countries or states. So altogether 30 languages where analyzed, and their preparedness to the digital age or for the digital age was also researched, basically, just to check how whether the languages are ready for the digital age, and there was some 200 or more researchers involved, and conclusions or the findings are rather frightening. And it's not only the case with the Latvian language, it concerns most of those 30 languages. So 21 languages, as researchers concluded, are threatened by the digital age or era or landscape, if you will, because their sort of digitalization lags behind the big languages or the dominant languages. And that's the sort of the context for our discussion, the broader sort of landscape in which we have to operate. Now, as regards to technologies and digital tools that the language needs, so different technologies are needed. Text technologies, speech technology is needed, translation technology, multimodal technology is required. By multimodality we mean also gestures and emotions that sort of go beyond the sort of use of a language, and various data retrieval from various repositories and storages. So in this 2011 research, languages have been grouped in the following way. So Latvian languages amongst those languages that are sort of lagging behind in terms of digital support, if you will, or digital platforms. And that's not because we are, forgive me for saying this, stupid compared to others. No, it's just because other languages are economically much stronger, they are being spoken by more people, and greater resources have been invested in their development, which is a challenge for small languages that sort of have a weaker support, because of their usage, fewer users or speakers. Now, what we have done since then, we've made major steps to improve the language status, and language status is indeed far better. And it's not only because of what Tilde has done. We have done a lot in order to offer, spell checks and pronunciation, verification tools, and various spell checkers and grammar checkers we've offered, and we've also made quite good advances in the machine translation area. And Tilde has in particular been involved in MT development, and we would like to thank the European Commission for providing the funds through the R&D program that allowed us to hire basically the best researchers in the area and create a platform that can be operated through various interfaces. And this is a program that sort of allows you to develop a multitude or a variety of solutions. And this is a project that has produced better results than, for example, Google products of a similar type. And these are the benchmarking results of the machine translation quality. And we see that our solutions are sort of producing better results compared to rival products. And, global corporations like Microsoft have already reached out to Tilde and have asked us to help them improve their solutions, and our solutions have also been integrated in the Twitter software, or available on Twitter, so people can now use the sort of this multilingual tool in Twitter as well. And we're very happy that we've been able to not only offer this to the Latvian people, but this has also been sort of copied and has been bought by the Estonians, and they use it in their machine translation solutions. And here you can see the Estonian president opening sort of or presenting the machine translation tool in Estonia. And it is also important to develop other language resources and language resources for the sort of public communication and professional communication. And Tilde has been also involved in the development of Euroterm Bank, the European terminology tool that includes not only the Latvian terminology, but terminology in other languages, and it also integrates the terminology that allows you to find the corresponding terms on the internet or in the depths of the internet. And just recently, thanks to the ICT Competence Center support, we'd managed to create or generate a speech recognition technology or tool that allows to transform or convert the spoken speech or utterances into written text, which is very important in today's sort of multimodal communication. And hopefully this will in future allow us or enable us to transform the spoken texts into written text, as well as will sort of allow to automate the interpretation. And now, as regards to the infrastructure for the European language resource, well, Tilde has taken part in this project as well. Riga is coordinating the Nordic-Baltic activities of this center from Riga, and we are basically sort of connecting the resources or coordinating the Baltic-Nordic resources, and Latvian language is also duly represented in this center, which is very important for the development of the Latvian language technologies. So to conclude, sort of to recap or to summarize what I just presented, is that we've made a significant progress in terms of strengthening the positions of the Latvian language ever since 2011 when the survey came out. But there's still a long way to go. Thank you. Thank you, Andrejs. And you know, we see now that it's not doom and gloom. We just need to sort of roll up our sleeves and get on to it. There's a lot to be done, and you know, as Latvian saying goes, tough gets going, and so on and so forth. And that same concerns, of course, language technologies, you know, that it's not getting easier, it's getting much more complicated. Andrejs Veisbergs is the chair of the Latvian Language Agency, and he's the author of several dictionaries, to put it mildly, several. Well, he's a very prominent researcher, professor, and he's also publishing various articles on the language development and what is happening in language, especially what's happening with Latvian language under the influence of the English language, the hegemony of the English language. So let me now turn the floor to Andrejs Veisbergs to talk about the role or the positional status of Latvian language in the digital age or digital landscape, and what developments, what has changed in the recent 5, 10, say 15 years, whatever time period you would like to cover. Thank you. Now, what concerns, you know, threats, I can't really say that the Latvian language is being endangered by the digital landscape or environment, but we should somehow talk about reducing the domination of the English languages, and that's the very sort of concern of the European Commission or EU, to fight monopolies. And Latvian language in the digital environment is only threatened by better quality tools and technologies that are available for other languages, which are much more convenient and much more sort of quick, and as Andrejs Vasiļjevs has mentioned, we alone cannot sort of lift this weight, and that's nice to have those EU funds available to us and projects available to us that allow us to coordinate things better. Now, what concerns digital sort of environment or landscape, there are sort of two perspectives on that. One is layman's, you know, we can talk in layman's term, you know, from the consumer point of view, from the reader's point of view, and who say that it's okay, you can read something in Latvian, you can write something in Latvian, you have all the different, you know, all diacritical marks and so on and so forth, and if you need to translate something, you just take the Google Translate and so on and so forth. And depending on the sort of professional career of people. We either laugh about it on professional background, we either laugh about it, or we might be very critical about that. But all in all, it helps us sort of understand better text in other languages. And then there's also the sort of the expert view on that, or expert dimension, if you will, provision. And by experts, I mean translators, interpreters, those working in public administration, translators and lexicographers. And, expert opinion is a lot more critical. And if you compare this opinion now and some 10 years ago, the expert opinion is that there is a multitude of resources or a plethora of resources available, but it's very difficult to sort of understand what is happening and how to use them. We have the terminology official database, TTC database. We have our IATE database, and terms in those databases differ, and how to choose the right term, which to use. My students, translators, interpreters, quite often use lingo and my memories in order to find various corresponding terms or matches, and there are differences because these tools or technologies use different resources, and it's not easy to sort of understand which is better and which is more appropriate.
The same can be said about the educational materials developed by the State Language Agency, and we can find other language learning materials online. And the selection is very varied, and it is difficult to determine which is good. So the question is whether we're not splurging with finances when just publishing them. Another interesting matter is the automated translation systems. They will never solve the quality matters completely. This also doesn't, the same applies to translators and interpreters. They don't necessarily always mean top quality. I have frequently heard many bad things about the materials published in other languages about the capital city of Latvia. I'm absolutely sure that they weren't translated using machine translation, but I think that they simply engaged poorly skilled or low or cheap translators, or maybe they just didn't have enough time for translating them. So we could find these threatening or danger signs everywhere. For example, the description of Latvia's history on Wikipedia was, in my opinion, written in Moscow, So generally, I could say that the idea to coordinate and pool resources is wonderful, and the EC will certainly be willing to support these opportunities within the scope of its financial abilities. And I mean, the commission that I'm talking about doesn't exist yet because the old one has been dismissed and the new one hasn't been established yet, that just the chair exists. As for dictionaries, problems exist, but the digital environment is where it is easier to solve these matters, because publishing dictionaries in the Latvian language combinations, especially in the ones with other small languages, are very few. Well, who's going to buy Latvian Icelandic or Latvian Greek dictionaries? Well, we'll not get far with printing houses, but things are different when we discuss the opportunities with the digital environments. And, we can coordinate these resources and pool them and share them and just increase this material that is already available for use right now. Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Veisbergs. So there are many segmentations of the languages. We can't know which resources are more reliable, and it is difficult to distinguish which ones are and which ones are not. And maybe this is part of our postmodern situation. Maybe in the totalitarian country there would be one correct database, which the government says that we must use it. As opposed to the following situation. Various sources exist, for example, terminology databases, and most probably it has been so that the private sector has come in and filled in some kind of a gap which would not have been filled in by somebody else, so maybe just because of the lack of funds. So, what about this fragmentation? We have to assess, is it bad to have several sources? No, the existence of various and varied sources is not bad, but the Academy of Sciences terminology databases is a government-run one, and the TTC databases is also a government-owned one. So we have two parallel systems already in place. And this is not bad, but I think that in many situations we just encounter boundaries, and the most simplified ones are say, linguist Enzelin's dictionary cannot be accessed online. We have to request the permits, and I think that copyright has already expired. But does it run out? No, the Mihlenbach's part has copyright has expired, but I think that next year the copyright expires. I have talked to students and some people who take interest in languages, so they find Mihlenbach's and Enzelin's dictionary, and then it turns out that they need to request permits and that this requires time, so they just simply decide that let's just close this resource and look up something else. So I think that there are many resource barriers that we should try avoiding. So what we all could do as users would be just not accept the easiest and most accessible option, but instead to be more critical regarding the resources. Just like with every other thing in your life, and you're a consumer, you have to assess what maybe not what is the cheapest, but what is the best, and similarly with publications, you have to assess which information is reliable and which isn't. The next speaker that I would like to give the floor to is Normunds Grūzītis from the Institute of Mathematics and Computer Sciences of the University of Latvia. So did you try to tackle this fragmentation or summarize it or to combine it together or put it in one place? Regarding these language resources, or are you working on something different? Well, I would also like to present a couple of slides to you. Firstly, I would like to emphasize that the situation of the Latvian language in the digital environment is not bad, and or maybe it is relatively good, at least taking into consideration the funding that is available, which has been fragmented in the science and research field, and it has been gapped. This funding has been gapped. Nevertheless, the Institute of Mathematics and Computer Sciences of the University of Latvia, and in cooperation with other institutions in Latvia and located elsewhere in Europe, we have been able to cooperate and make great progress. As for the resources, my colleague Ilze Auziņo will describe this in greater detail. I would like to outline the key areas that we have worked on up to now. I haven't included our experience in machine translation. We are going to hear lots about it today. That's why I have focused on other directions that we have been working on. Since the establishment of our laboratory, which was in 1992, we have been working on various resources and key tools and automation tools for the Latvian languages. That could include morphological analysis and syntaxis analysis. As a result, we have come up with resources for syntactical analysis of, say, corpus and so on. During the last 5 to 10 years, we have progressed greatly with the semantic analysis of the text. In other words, we don't understand automatically the text, but we have moved to the sentence level and to text level and even document level. We have also attempted to go narrower and deeper in multilingual knowledge representation. In other words, we try not only to translate text from one person to another, but instead we try to convert text into formal models that can be understood to people. And then we have classical directions such as corpus linguistics and computer lexicography, and they have become units of separate units. They are used at educational institutions, and they are used in combination with various resources, and are widely applied outside of the scientific field. Also, during the recent years, we have made a significant breakthrough with speech recognition and synthesis in cooperation with Tilde and other partners. And certainly, it is very difficult to summarize this in a couple of minutes. Therefore, I would like to provide you with a couple of examples that summarize our experience, which has enabled us to confirm or probe our scientific attempts. One of them is related to automated information extraction in cooperation with the national news agency Latvia. We have been able to develop a tool that works with unstructured texts, and it provides automated analysis and then contributes to a knowledge base. And later on, we can use this in various ways. For example, in this particular way, we can make profiles of public officials. We can acquire such profiles, or so to speak, CVs, where we can put down what the particular person in question has done or achieved, and we have tried to automate this. Another significant example that summarizes text analysis and speech analysis is media monitoring, and we have also collaborated with the national news agency Latvia. In this direction, the task here was to listen to radio and TV news. Up to now, this was done by human beings. They just put on headphones and listen to shows and try to listen to terms and keywords and proper nouns and other things that might be interesting to one client or another. But we have tried to automate this process so that one person does not need to sit and listen with headphones. Instead, a system could do this, and then conclude the keywords that appear in audio or video materials. And then I would like to mention a narrower direction, so to speak. However, it might be a more topical for us. We try to analyze the written or legislative language, for example, the ones text generated by news agencies and other resources. But also we have tried to analyze the texts that have been made or written by online users, which can sometimes be derogative or maybe incorrect grammatically. We have cooperated with the Stradiņš University, and we have come up with user monitoring in news portals, and we have tried to follow along aggressiveness levels and correlation of these aggressiveness levels with news that appear on one topic or another. And I would like to mention once again that the situation with the Latvian language is not as bad as it might seem. We have the potential and the potential capacity, which unfortunately within the scope of the existing funding is not being fully used, but I think that nevertheless the situation is quite positive. Thank you. It is interesting to listen about this monitoring, because I think this is where the same thing appears as in machine translation, because the machine does one type of work, and then the human beings can work on the basis of that. In science, it is so that we progress ahead. We have what we know inside, and we have what we don't know outside. So where do you encounter the things that you don't know? And what are the things that you have to, say, overcome, or that you have to work and focus on right now, particularly in the field of computer linguistics? Well, I think that the bar increases by every year. But in principle, our task is to automate the things that are routinical, the things that have been done by human beings up to now, and that by the help can be solved automatically using the artificial intellect, so that human beings can be engaged in more creative tasks. And I tried to outline a couple of particular examples, but the areas or directions can be different. In other words, we try to get the burden of the routine work from the human beings, so the human beings can work on something more creative. I think that for us, human beings, intellectual workers, means that we need lifelong learning, so that we can switch from the tasks that computers take over and focus on creative tasks that computers can't perform. Thank you, Mr. Grūzītis. Now I would like to give the floor to Inita Vītola from the Latvian Language Agency, which also develops learning materials. And now I would like to ask you, how do these learning materials live in the digital environment? Have you switched to the digital environment? How far are we in this regard?
Hello, obviously, today can't really imagine people living without the computer and software applications and resources those computers offer us. Of course, language learning is a vast sort of field of activity or research. However, we need language resources in order to arrive at much more solid scientific conclusions and findings and hypotheses as well. So, seems that somehow there is a sort of a milestone that we can see, 2010, 2011, 2012, when those serious researches were conducted not only here in Latvia but also at the European level, when an identification of resources and software was done, not only in Europe but in Latvia as well. I suppose that 2010, 2011 was the sort of a landmark for us. And that's when we began thinking about what we have, what we need, basically took a stock of what we have and what we need. And we also organized various workshops, and we also published a digital sort of a leaflet or booklet. And the objective of those activities or efforts was to reach out to the professors and to the general public and talk to them about what we have and usage of those resources. And back then, in terms of computer technologies or computer linguistics tools that we had available back then, there were quite a few. Now there are much more, and I'm not going to talk figures to you, but there's a great sort of pool of resources now available. Now, at the sort of government level, the funding activities and project activities, as well as the various legal and other framework activities, are getting better if there is a political will and political support. That's a rule. Our language policy talks about language learning, language computing, and computer linguistics, various tools, projects, and solutions. And the funding has been earmarked for those, not only for the language technology projects, but also for the language research projects. And hopefully the funding will be allocated for that as well. Statistically, language applications are sort of dominating in that sort of pipeline of the project, but still there are things that have not been developed fully or not convenient enough from a user perspective or point of view. Ideally, any application, any resource, like, corporate, the gigging process, should be convenient for the research needs as well, without any sort of complicated access sort of restrictions, or in other words, it should be open access. And what concerns corporate, it's invaluable in developing various dictionaries and research in linguistics. And obviously now what concerns Latvian Language Agency are sort of work is determined by the language policy, language development guidelines. Now, 15% of our budget that comes from the central budget is spent on various textbooks and other teaching resources or educational resources, and other, including digital resources as well. So this is not for sort of some kind of tools, translation tools, something, but I'm talking about various applications. And, we'll have that sort of funding ratio for the textbooks and so on and so forth for the period until 2020, around about 15%, which is quite sufficient. I mean, if you compare it to the other sort of responsibilities our agency has. We're happy about any and every new dictionary that comes out there. In this case, computational linguistics or computer linguistics, and electronic communication sort of, offers vast opportunities for the language development, for the lexicology development, and we offer different dictionaries, and we not only create those dictionaries together with the authors, but also with the general public. Then we also have various leaflets, booklets, information, various information resources and other electronic resources are being offered. This, for example, on the development of the linguistics in Latvia, and now what concerns Latvian language, communication bridge portal and learn and teach portal offers a vast sort of list of resources. The problem that we have is that the electronic resources usually targeting particular audience, and our agency is sort of targeting large masses of people. We have various resources for the primary school, for the secondary school, for the upper secondary education. We have teachers, for digital boards, immigrants and diaspora or expats that cannot sort of maintain their language without those resources, including digitalized resources as well. So we are working with vast range of target groups, and we have not only the state funding available, state aid available, we also have European Union funds at our disposal, the funding for the integration projects or purposes, and there's quite a hefty sum coming from the EU funds. And technological solutions or solutions are very important. What makes us rich is the ability, or sort of what enriches us is the ability of those people, or skills and competences of those people that are developing those digital tools. And they are very creative, so there's no doubt about that. But there are two sides to every coin. You know, there's content, and then there's the software as well, by which you sort of process or operate this content. So the Latvian Language Agency is also focusing to a large degree on the content of those tools, any and every application, software, sort of only benefits from a better quality content. So technology without content is virtually nothing. As regards to Latvian language being endangered, I don't really think that we're threatened or endangered as long as we have people speaking Latvian language. So that's how I would reflect on that. Well, as we see, there are no threats. We just need to plow on, so to say. You know, yes, recently we've been talking about all sorts of threats and risks, but indeed, yes, just have to continue, you know, marching on. So, yes, you know, we have computers and everything. This is supposed to be a discussion, but everybody is listening sort of very actively, but the only speaker so far is me, most probably. But Vītola mentioned, you know, the public involvement in the development of dictionaries, which is quite interesting, by the way, because we know that online resources to a large extent depend on the user involvement or engagement as well. So let me ask the panelists now a very particular question. All of us are very busy, but if you would have some spare time, if you would be able to free up your time and assist or help, you know, and become a part to crowdsourcing, you know, something that you will do in your spare time, something that you're passionate about. So what would be this thing that you would sort of be dedicated to if you would have this sort of quantum of time, and if you would have this spare time to sort of help further the Latvian language resources online? Maybe Mr. Veisbergs might start. Well, probably we should, you know, devote our time to the Latvian language dictionary. But there are many dictionaries, but there's one that stands out. You know, you just type in a word, and you know, a thesaurus that provides the explanation of the usage. So the thesaurus need to be developed, and there are quite many words that are not included in this thesaurus, and that's the one dictionary that, you know, does not allow users to send in their proposals. Or which dictionary are you talking about? It's the Latvian language, or the thesaurus. You know, it's basically a white sort of a screen, and you just type something in, you know, a little sort of a window at the top. I don't remember exactly. Andrejs Vasiļjevs, what would you do? Where would you spend your time if you would have spare time? Well, somehow this is Rainis and Aspāzija, two famous Latvian poets. So I've been thinking a lot about what Rainis has said in different contexts. His sort of breadth of vision also had impact on his use of language. To him, language was a living organism, a very creative sort of phenomena, and we still benefit from Rainis and the words that he created, the everyday usage words that we are now using on a daily basis. And let me sort of introduce an off-topic, if you will, you know, what concerns language sort of creativity. We should somehow listen more to what the poets and what the writers say, and Janina Kursīt with her dictionary is sort of a real model to follow, you know, in this regard. And today, what I'd like to encourage everyone to do is to use, you know, more Latvian. We have nice words in Latvian, and we need to use them. Normunds, Grūzītis, now, if you would have time to sort of contribute to an important language project, what would it be? Well, then I would most probably sort of get involved in projects that are difficult to measure, you know, that are not really popular from the funding point of view. I'm talking about culture and cultural heritage. I would like to sort of work or focus on the core projects and so on and so forth. There was a comment about dictionaries, by the way. So, frankly speaking, we're quite surprised at how, active our dictionary users are. We receive comments, thousands of comments on monthly and annual basis. They point out to various errors, to additional meanings that have not been added, and we also try to put our finger on the missing words, and we try to provide definitions. So it's not enough to have just a list of words, but you need to also have the definitions and the meanings attached to them. But I'm very sort of surprised, pleasantly surprised, by the active feedback that we have from the users. Inita, Vītola, you have anything to add? What would your project be? So, well, most probably I shouldn't be allowed to do that because I might spoil something, because basic tools and basic sort of databases without which no language would develop in future and no solutions would be developed is what I would get engaged. So what we usually call national corpora, sort of balanced corpora, comprehensive corpora. We have different other specialized corpora, but we don't have a convenient corpora available to the general public. So that's the project that I would like to devote my time to. But most probably I should be kept away from those because I might spoil them. So thank you. Let us conclude our panel discussion by reminding all of us here that there were dictionaries that were printed on paper, and then there was the last page which contained mistakes, and their correction. I would like to remind you that nowadays everything has been digitalized. If you use a machine translation tool, don't be angry, don't be ridiculing it, because there are people behind this tool who are, expecting your feedback, who would be happy and who would appreciate your feedback and would introduce the corresponding changes. That would be the way for us to all contribute to a better tool, to a better solution. So that's my wish to you, and with this I would like to conclude this panel discussion. Thank you.